Hi, I'm Gigi Duban, and on this special episode of Alabama Inc., the Birmingham Museum of Art gets a facelift. We take you behind the scenes at Big Communications to find out what goes into a logo and how the museum's fresh new brand is born. And the ever-bubbly Pat Duggins talks with Matthew Dent. He's the CEO of Buffalo Rock, Pepsi bottler, and maker of that gingeriest of ginger ale. It's all coming up on Alabama Inc. When you want to change up your look, what do? Maybe get a haircut, a couple new outfits, get a piercing. But when a company rebrands itself, there's a lot more to think about. The folks at Big Communications took on a huge project, giving the Birmingham Museum of Art a fresh new look. We followed them over months to get an inside look at how that brand was born. This is Big Communications. It's an advertising and PR company in downtown Birmingham. Former music promoter John Montgomery founded the company in 1995. Since then, it's grown to a shop with 43 employees.
Style is more than just a look.
Unless you don't own a TV or never crack open a magazine, chances are you've seen some of their work. Remember after the Gulf oil spill, no one wanted to eat seafood from the coast? Well, Big did the Alabama Gulf Seafood rebranding campaign. And those Go Build Alabama commercials with Mike Rowe, that's them too.
Go build Alabama.
They've done work all over the region. This latest assignment, a pretty big deal. It's a cultural landmark, the Birmingham Museum of Art. The museum is huge, 150,000 square feet to be exact. That's a lot of space that museum officials say is underutilized in a way. Which is to say, there are hundreds and hundreds of people who walk or drive past the museum every day and have never set foot in the building. And that's why the museum needs a new brand. James Williams is the creative director there.
So you guys are working with Big right now to do what?
We want to redevelop our visual identity. The current one we have was kind of redesigned around 8 years ago, shortly before I started at the museum. The logo, which we use, is really just more of a piece of type, and it was developed before smartphones and before apps and before a huge digital media presence needed to be established for a brand. So one of the reasons we want to work with Big is to develop something that works in those digital arenas. You know, a nice, simple logo that can work, you know, in an app icon and things like that.
What Big needs to do here goes beyond just a new logo. When you're coming up with a new brand, there are many more things to think about. Like the signs that tell visitors where to go, the images that pop up on a web search, even the little placards that describe the art on display. First things first, Big needs to get a lay of the land. Museum director Gail Andrews leads the folks at Big on a tour. All the info the crew at Big gleans from this first visit will be pored over and analyzed for weeks. This is all to get ready for the project kickoff meeting. That's the next step. A few weeks later, the museum folks head over to Big to talk about what kind of a problem they have on their hands and start the brainstorming process. You remember James from the museum. Along with him is Kate McCusker, who heads up marketing and communications for the museum.
So these pieces kind of show sort of where the state of things are currently. So these are kind of the two primary looks for everything right now. You know, in any of these cases, if we used our standard logo, it either gets lost, it's not strong enough to compete. Just right now, there's nothing about it that really says art museum other than the fact that it literally spells out art museum.
There's lots to digest. And one guy who'll be taking on a lot of this is Ford Wiles. He's Big's creative director.
If you could boil it down, what is the problem you're trying to solve with the museum?
Well, for me, I think it is raising awareness, right? But I do think it's about reminding people of this awesome institute that we have here, and getting people excited about it again. A museum is there to inspire you, right? I mean, you go there and you're in awe. You're looking at things that you couldn't possibly do, right? It makes your imagination explode, right? And that to me is that's the insight that I want to bring out of that and apply it to whatever we create.
Earlier I heard John say the good thing about this is that, about working with the museum, is that there are no rules.
Right.
Is that true?
There's never any rules.
No formula, no flow chart.
No flow chart,
How does anything get done?
It does somehow, right? There's definitely a process to the stuff that we do, but it's not rigid, right? And that's the thing that I try to teach my guys, is that it's not science, no matter how bad you want it to be that, right? It's we'd love for it to be. It's it's a logo project, we do this first, then we do this step, and we do that. It doesn't work like that. Yes, we do have to get to a final endpoint, but it's not a rigid process that we do. Because I think that is, you get expected results when you do that, It's not really...
That's not what you're looking for.
Not really.
Fortunately for Big, this isn't the first time a museum has undergone a rebranding. So it makes sense to look first at how other places did it, what worked and what didn't.
Whatever the format is. The Imperial War Museum. The W in there represents war in obviously the name of the museum, but in how war impacts people's lives. It drives a wedge in people's lives. It creates change. Yeah, it's divisive, and that's what they wanted to represent with the W there in their logo.
It looks like Austin's trying to do what you said, which is get out of the way. And is that what your interpretation of get out of the way?
No.
This. Austin. Yeah.
I don't mind the brand getting out of the way. I think the art needs to get in the way.
One of the other things just to keep an eye on is that it's easy to fall into convention of going super modern with this stuff, because a lot of these are, but that is not in any way a reflection of the collection at the museum, and that would be somewhat disingenuous if we went all super, pink and pop art when it's just not there.
Somebody was doing something really great, once we come up with that thing, then it's you just have to put that thing on there and everybody knows. Oh, that's the museum, right? So that would be my goal of what we've got to accomplish with the mark.
This story on Alabama Ink. will continue after these messages.
Several more weeks have gone by. There's been lots of brainstorming at Big as far as logos, images, shapes, colors, all of that.
So what are we looking at?
Well, this is typically an art board for an illustrator, right? So an art board is when you start working on a logo or any sort of creative files, this is kind of just the madness that goes on.
How many different designs are on this right now?
Well, this is just one document. Usually I'll just go until I can't go anymore, or it gets too hard to find what I'm doing in this document, and then I literally will start another one. I don't know how many there are. A lot. You'll get over in these. We got in. I spent a day exploring this. It's how simple shapes, and could we get the B and the M and the A into a single form, right? For me, it helps me to visualize hey, let's throw it on a tote bag. How does this thing look on a tote bag, right? How about the Wedgwood collection down there? What are we gonna do for the Wedgwood lovers, right? It's just thinking about all the different ways that we can bring this thing to life. It was important to me, you know, as we're working through this, right? So we're talking about the problem that we're solving here of, you know, if I crop Birmingham like that, right? You know, it's just like, why would I do that? Well, the reason I would do that is that you're only seeing it in its static state, right? But if you thought about it dimensionally, you know, all the information is there, right? You're just looking at one side.
Yeah,
Right? So those are the kind of things that, like, it really helps to put them in motion, to kind of look at them to see, because if I just showed you that, it's like, well, that's not very good, right? But I show it to you moving, you have a different opinion of it, right?
Aaron Gresham is on Big's creative team. His process is a little different than Ford's. He goes old school, with pen and paper doodles.
You've got some doodles in this notebook.
Yes, a lot of doodles.
You're doing it old school,
Yes.
pencil and paper.
Yes.
Instead of using this fancy contraption
Well,
over here.
the
Why?
the computer's limiting. You know, immediately the tool starts holding you back. You know the shapes that it can make naturally. You know the line tool. Whereas here I can draw anything, and very, very quickly. I can work through 40 or 50 loose sketches in a time that it would take to maybe do one or two here. I probably narrowed, who knows how many are in here, maybe a couple of hundred down to 8 to 10 that I took in and started playing with on the computer, and try to get an iconic symbol or seal that can read almost by itself. You know, I wouldn't say like McDonald's or Nike, because they have tons of equity and a lot of money they've pumped behind that, but I would love for it to, as a piece of art, also read as the Museum of Art without the words.
This is the meeting where Big presents its final rebrand, the Big Reveal. Everyone's here. People from Big, people from the museum, everyone back together again for the first time since that first museum tour.
Welcome back to Big. We're here today to show you next steps in the branding process. There's a lot to look at, and Ford's going to take you through the deck.
First, they show a bunch of ideas that they explored. Some with brightly colored dots, some with spinning cubes. So far, the museum folks seem impressed. And then
Definitely
they
inspiration.
show the one.
They kind of led us to this mark and your icon.
It uses the clean lines that form the museum's entrance. And the verdict? It's a winner.
It's our first front door, first threshold that was created for the public.
In timeliness, right? It feels like, was this designed 50 years ago or 5 minutes ago, right? And I think it does kind of pass that, you know, timeless. Yeah. And I think that, you know, it's got to look good on a tote bag and a black t-shirt. Yes, if it doesn't work on a tote bag or a black t-shirt, then it's not going to work as a museum icon, all right? So.
There's still work to be done, but look around the museum next time you're there, and you'll see Big's new brand splashed all over the place.
About all of that. Good. Okay. Thank you. Excellent. Terrific. Thank you.
Coming up next on Alabama Inc.
There's a lot of moving parts, and there's a lot to learn, and I still hadn't learned it all after 20 years.
When you think of college internships, what comes to mind? Fetching coffee, watching the professionals work? That may have been what Matthew Dent did during his internship at Buffalo Rock Beverages, but it's not what he's doing now. He's the CEO. Here's how we got from here to there. I understand that you were an intern at the University of Alabama when you first set foot here. What was that like?
You know, if I flash back to when I started, it all started because of the University of Alabama. I needed an internship in the School of Business, and so I had written a couple of different companies, and luckily Buffalo Rock had an office in Tuscaloosa, and they were willing to take me. I worked for free, and I got my 3 hours class credit, and this January, 2015, will be 20 years since I took that internship.
Wow. Now, when did you first see the plant? Because, like, when I was young, I remember going to a soft drink bottling plant and just seeing everything going on. It was just awesome and stuff. Like, when was the first time you ever walked into the main nerve center?
I took a tour of this plant when I was in grade school. So lucky enough to grow up in Birmingham and near this area, and took a tour then. And then that was my first memory of this plant. But when I came with the company, most all of my work was down in Tuscaloosa and in the local market in that area. And then I was hired on by the chief operating officer at the time to come here and work. And actually one of the first things they had me do when I came to work here was spend a week out in the manufacturing facility and learn what was going on.
What was that like?
Eye-opening. This is a fast-paced business with a lot of units, a lot of touches. We have a lot of employee partners doing, very complex functions all the time, and so we'll do almost 1 billion containers out of here annually. And if you take that billion and spread it across just-in-time deliveries and operating schedules, and having raw materials here planned ahead of time, there's a lot of moving parts, and there's a lot to learn. And I still hadn't learned it all after 20 years.
So we're seeing all of these cans going behind us like soldiers. From this process to when somebody picks it up at their store could be as fast as what?
So we have a total of about 7.5 to 8 days of inventory in our total system. So what you're seeing today, these bottles were picked up in McCalla, Alabama, probably either earlier today or yesterday, brought here, produced today. They're in inventory here for about 2 days. They're shipped to our distribution center, and then they're out to the store. So they're in store about 7 days from now. It's moving fast. We'll do roughly about 500 million bottles a year and almost about 500 million cans a year as well. So almost 1 billion containers out of this plant annually.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, you're the first non-family member to lead this company?
I am, and I'm honored to have that, that title, but I'm the first non-family president of the business.
Now you represent Pepsi, and here's an analogy for you. My wife and I were driving around one time, and we went to Kentucky, to the very first Kentucky Fried Chicken. And they have a museum there to Colonel Sanders, and in there somewhere is this big drum of the 11 herbs and spices that he would send around to all of his franchisees, and that's how they would make the chicken according to the way the Colonel did it. Since you all produce Pepsi products, do they do that to you? Do they kind of ship in the ingredients, or do they just send you like the formula and it's like, okay, this is how you do it?
So we buy concentrate from the parent companies. So we buy Pepsi concentrate, Mountain Dew concentrate, Dr. Pepper concentrate, and we bring those in. And our experts that are in our syrup room and our blenders, we actually blend that concentrate with other ingredients, and we're making it in a just-in-time fashion, and then we're putting it in core packaging and secondary packaging. Core packaging would be like a can or a bottle, and secondary packaging is in a box or shrink film or a 6-pack carrier. So we're doing a lot of touches, but we're a converter, so we take materials and blend all that together, and we actually make Pepsi locally. And we're proud that we're an Alabama manufacturer first, and we're proud that we produce over 80% of everything we sell, we manufacture right here at this plant.
So armed guards around the concentrate, I imagine it's like, it's a major corporate secret then, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's like Fort Knox. We lock it up, and we can take you close to it, but you can't see it later.
So, all right, now, Buffalo Rock serves Florida, Georgia, and Alabama, and I was kind of curious, are there variations to the products? I mean, Georgia like theirs maybe a little bit more this way, and Alabama a little bit more this way, or is it kind of like straight on, this is the way we do it, and everybody gets the same thing?
Well, from a product quality standpoint, everybody gets the same product, and so there are very rigid guidelines around how we manufacture the product, and we are very proud that we have had a very long tenure of winning the highest awards in the Pepsi system around our product quality, and we take that very seriously, and we're putting a lot of capital in to become even better at that. Now, consumers are different, and consumers are almost different by zip code, which is really interesting, is that we come with a portfolio of products, but some are more popular in other areas than others, and so we're always trying to sell our portfolio and have every a drink for everybody, and I feel like we do. We've got a great portfolio, but the consumers are the ones that are making the choices.
Who came up with the idea of the Recycled Buffalo Rock Product Design Contest, where young designers were urged to come up with what fashions, I think it was, based on Buffalo Rock materials and things like that?
Well, earlier when I spoke of that we've brought new leaders into our business, I'm very proud that Laura Kate Lindsay came into our company And she has brought a lot of civic engagement and different opportunities for us to be a partner with. And so she worked with Birmingham Fashion Week and brought that idea to life. And we were so proud of all the clothing and young adults using materials that we use in products to make fashion, and we had award winners and awarded scholarship money. It's just, we couldn't have been more proud of it, and it was a real bright spot of our year so far.
Nowadays, with First Lady Michelle Obama pushing, fitness for kids, that sort of thing, there's always the subject brought up of whether or not there should be soft drinks served, in vending machines at school, stuff like that. Anyway, has that impacted your business at all in terms of that push?
Yeah, I think if you go back over time, one of the most interesting things that I've seen during my tenure in our company is our portfolio. And there was a time back in the late 70s and early 80s when 90+% of our portfolio was full sugar. Today, more than half or 60% of our portfolio is no-cal to mid-cal. And so our industry has made huge efforts in innovating products that are, that fit every part of the lifestyle. And so, if somebody wants a lower calorie or mid-calorie or full calorie, we have all of that. And we also have waters and juices, and we think we have something for everybody. We also think that it is our duty to help promote active lifestyles and balanced calorie initiatives as well. And so we're very much a proponent of consumer choice. And so we're definitely advocates of making sure that consumers have the best products with the most information they can to make their informed choice. And so we want a product for everybody, but we also want to produce, and help promote active lifestyles and different campaigns of that nature too.
That's our show for this week. Be sure to follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Keep up with the stories we're working on and tell us what you think. I'm Gigi Duban, and we'll see you next time on Alabama Inc.